Hello, this is Dr. Sanusi with Pediatrics To-Go. Thank you for watching us, and today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. We do have a guest who shall be talking about the topic too. So what we're talking about today is actually child trafficking and legal ways to adopt children, because we do know that a lot of people have issues with infertility, and there's a lot of legal ways to do things, but there's the black market way to do things. So just so that we're all aware, this does not replace a consultation with a lawyer, but we just want to bring the awareness of what can be done if you're a family member, or if you're a couple, husband and wife, you've been married for a couple of years and there's no kids, the legal ways to go around adopting children and how to avoid child trafficking. So today we have an attorney who's joining us for the program, and we want to welcome our attorney, and he's going to introduce himself. Thank you. So Mr. Eyinnaya, please introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. So my name is Eyinnaya Uchenna Eyinnaya. I'm a legal practitioner, and I'm in Lagos, Nigeria.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Eyinnaya, for joining us. So today we're just trying to explain to families and to hospitals the legal ways of adopting children and how to avoid being a child trafficker. Now, what is child trafficking?
Well, child trafficking is when you have custody of a child without proper legal authorization. Of course, from birth, the parents of a child are the original custodians of that child. And if for any reason the child is going to, be passed on to another party, there has to be a proper, legal process by which that is done, and typically that's adoption. Okay. So a person who is otherwise in custody of a child without those legal processes being followed would be trafficking.
Okay, but in Nigeria, there's a lot of people that will come and say, "Oh, I have a child, and please, I know that you have money. Can you take my child and look after the child and just make the child your own?" So what would you say about that? Because a lot of people do that. They say, "Oh, you have money. Can you take care of my child and be the custodian?" So are there legal ways of doing that? Because many people have done that. And I know growing up, we had a lot of family members that would bring their kids, and they would grow up in our house just because they thought, okay, my dad and my mom could raise their children because it was the norm.
Yes, of course. I think you have those informal arrangements in Nigeria. I remember growing up too. I mean, there was a lot of the time that we had other people.
And we loved it, by the way. A lot of our relatives, we all grew up together.
Yeah.
It was one big happy family.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So
what's the difference between that and child trafficking?
Well, in those instances, usually you are familiar, you're familiar with each other, your family relatives, and there's that consent, from the parents of the person for the child to stay with your family. And I think there are even those checks occasionally when they visit and other things like that. This is not taking a child away illegally without any notice or without any authorization from the parents of that child. Now, especially when you have to, for instance, move away with that child. This is what child trafficking really entails typically. The child is a commodity really, that is, acquired and then sold, taken to a different place or given to a different person.
And the parents aren't aware.
And the parents are usually not aware of what's happening.
Okay. So as physicians and as medical practitioners, what are the red flags to look out for when we have parents come in with a child that has been trafficked? What do we do?
Well, I think one of the important things to look out for would be behavioral signs, to see how the child acts around the adult, because a lot of the time the child may say nothing, but if you're observing closely, you'd see that there could be fear or anxiety, which would be inconsistent with probably the narrative that the adult has given. And it's very important, especially because sometimes the child may not even be expressive in English language. All right, because something again that people exploit is that they go to communities where there is poverty, and they acquire a child from there. The child has never been expressive in English language. And so the child coming to the hospital would be tense and anxious about how to communicate. So you look out for those behavioral signs. You also look out for physical indicators to see if there are bruises or other marks, and I think very importantly as well, you look out for documentation where you have all these inconsistencies or gaps in the child's medical history. I think those are red flags that physicians can look out for when they have those kind of children being brought in.
Okay, and then I guess families too. When you see a new child showing up in a family member's home and you're not sure exactly what's going on, families can also ask questions about the legal ways that the children were acquired, especially if you notice that, okay, Mr. and Mrs., they've been married for a while and all of a sudden a child shows up, I guess people can also make sure that family members are towing the line of doing things right. So now if I'm a mom and I wanted to adopt, or if I'm an adult and I wanted to adopt a child, what are the legal ways to do that?
Well, the legal ways for adoption, firstly, is the Child's Rights Act that governs this situation, and then respective child's right laws in the different states. In different states, you have different laws, but generally, what it entails is the child is usually gotten from an orphanage, and then you would need to have the ministry, it could be the Ministry of Youth and Women Affairs, or whichever ministry is responsible in that state, have to give you the permission to have the child. I think there's usually a temporal phase where the child is allowed to live with you. It's not a permanent.
But comes and goes between you and the orphanage.
Yes, and then they come for visits and other to do other checks, and then, but the final step in the process is the court. The court gives the order if it's satisfied that you can have the child as yours, and then you can go through the legal process of having the child renamed or to get documentation.
Okay. But the problem is some parents might say, oh, we don't have the information, we don't know where to get the information, or it takes too long, or it's too expensive. What would you say about that?
Well, I think it's a very valid, it is a valid excuse, I would say. And I think many Nigerians will probably be familiar with the documentary, I think from 2-3 years ago, by an investigative journalist, I think Fisayo Soyombo, that's his name. And, one of the things that came out of that documentary was that it was very clear that the legal process for adopting children can be
very tedious,
very cumbersome. Yes. Because, for instance, he talked about a couple that had applied and 2 years later had heard nothing. So you could see why people sometimes feel the need to go a different route. And these are people who are not trying to do anything criminal at all. They just want a child. Yeah. Yes. So I think there needs to be a harmonization of the process to make it less tedious,
and make it easier for people.
Yes.
Because generally, I think a lot of people, if it's not that. If it wasn't that complicated or difficult, they wouldn't go resort to trafficking.
Oh yeah.
That's what and then because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know better, they've been told, oh, we can do it this way. They feel that that's an option that's not a problem, but it is a problem.
And honestly, and it's also just the Nigerian thing of,
trying to circumvent.
Yes. But the problem now is when they, for instance, need to travel with that child.
Yes. And then the embassies are asking.
Now there's a lot of red flags that are raised, and questions start to be asked, and they could travel to a different jurisdiction now and be held because invariably they're committing a criminal act, even if they had no knowledge of that. And I believe you see that in the hospital sometimes when people come in and they say, oh, just write that I'm the birth mom of this child.
And that's a legal document. You can't, hospitals are not responsible to write that. On the birth certificate, it does show that who the parents are. And if you don't have an original birth certificate with your name on it as a parent, you can't go somewhere and say, oh, just write I'm the mother because I've been bringing a child in for the last 2 years.
Yes.
So hospitals need to be aware of that too.
Yes, of course.
Because those are legal implications. The medical record is a legal document.
Of course, and these things have far-reaching consequences because when anything goes in the society, then you start to have a loss of credibility with everything, which is why, for instance, in embassies sometimes they don't trust documents that are, issued by even institutions. It's because when people can obtain these things, somebody just says, oh, put down the birth mom, when there's no evidence, when there's no proof, when you have no knowledge of that person being the birth mom of a child, then that creates problems and it undermines, our institutions and credibility, and it affects everyone.
All right. So thank you so much, Mr. Eyi, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for the information that you gave to us. And moms and dads and families generally, I would just recommend, going online to find out what is available in your area, wherever you live in Nigeria. Just make sure that you can get an attorney involved, and then they'll be able to guide you in the adoption process so that nobody is trafficked, and so that things are done properly, and so that it's not a problem for the child down the line because of the irregularities of guardianship and adoption and child trafficking too. Because in the US it's a big deal, and you show up with a child that's not your own and you can't prove, jail time also can be served just because of that. And there's this big thing of slavery versus child trafficking. And a lot of communities need to be educated on that too, just so that we don't end up getting into trouble.
Yes.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. Please subscribe to our channels on the YouTube, Instagram, and all the different social media platforms. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.